Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
PD Beats here from Popternative, speaking to Michael Schur about a lot of really cool things. He is going to be a recipient of the Outstanding Writer Award for Television at the Austin Film Festival. Thank you so much for doing this. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I was saying, you were a recipient of an Outstanding Television Writer Award at the Austin Film Festival. Obviously, film festivals are always changing, Michael, like every year, especially with the pandemic, a lot of virtual components. Did the networking component always stand out to you, though, for festivals like this?
Yeah, I think that's part of the point of them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Austin Festival in particular is very writer-centric, which makes it unique, I think, and in the sort of a singular focus on the craft of writing. And we just had the luncheon, and it was really lovely to see all these writers say that the best part of the festival was getting to talk to other writers. It's a weird job, and it's often very a lonely job. And it's wonderful to have a place where people who do that lonely job can all gather and just like trade stories and talk and get to know each other. I think that's the best part of it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have written and created arguably some of the greatest sitcoms of all time, of our generation. And a lot of these shows, Michael, don't really have a shelf life. And I was just curious because of streaming platforms, they're always around. They're always on the internet. There's memes and all the time. It will never leave. But I'm just curious. There's obviously the point when you're kind of creating and writing these shows like Parks and Rec and The Good Place, you want to make good TV, but does the shelf life component ever come to play as well, that you want to make a show that won't really have a shelf life, or that it kind of just happens after you make it? I'm curious about that.
No, at least I never think about that.
Okay.
It's hard enough just to make something good. Forget about try to make something that will last forever or stand the test of time. Like ultimately the people who watch TV will determine that, right? Like It's a lot easier now than it used to be. I would say there was a period during the early stages of the pandemic where The Office was arguably more popular than it was when it was actually on television, because people were going back and watching it.
Oh yeah.
And that, I mean, no one saw that coming, right? And people who had the slight misfortune to make their shows right before the age of Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and everything else, like those people didn't get to experience what I've gotten to experience, which is that they're, like you said, always around. People can go back and rediscover them, can rewatch them. Look, comedy's not meant to last forever. Like almost nothing from 30 years ago is still funny today. It has an expiration date. The culture changes, attitudes change and shift. People like things for one reason in 1990 and for a totally different reason in 2021. So all you can do is make something you think is good now and leave the rest up to fate and the future.
It's true, because The Office during the pandemic, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine is one as well, that I feel like it was up for a couple of seasons, and then it was in some countries available on Netflix, and then it just kind of exploded and people went back. That's an interesting thing I didn't realize as well. A lot of these projects, you've collaborated with different people and created it with different people on different ones. I'm just curious, do you have kind of, maybe not like a formula, do you have a specific mindset when you're tackling a new show, you're creating or writing a new show, or does it really depend on the project and who you're working with?
It's all project specific. There's no formula, or if there is, I'm not smart enough to have figured it out.
I feel like people think there's a formula though, based on all your amazing work.
Well, I look, if there is anything approaching a formula, it's pick an idea that matters to you, that you think is interesting, that you think has something to say about the world. Collaborate with people that you think are smart and interesting and have something to say about the world, and then roll the dice. That's about as good a formula as you can get. And it's a little bit like baseball or something. Like your success rate is, if you hit 300, you're doing amazing. Like there are plenty of ideas that are good ideas that you make with good people that don't work for whatever reason. It's not the right time or the place or the right network, the right medium, the right cast, or you didn't write it well enough, whatever it is. So there's no other way to game the system. You just have to pick ideas that you care about, that you feel passionately about, collaborate with people you think are smart and funny, and then the rest is, a lot of it is left to chance.
Oh, absolutely. And one can make an argument that, workplace comedy obviously is like your wheelhouse. That's a lot of your projects. You look at The Good Place, and the thing about that show that I really love, just it is a unique concept. It is a unique kind of situation of all these characters. When you were creating that show, was that kind of wa- I'm just curious because that's one of your more recent projects. Was that kind of in
Mhm.
mind as well when you were created, that you wanted to maybe make something a little bit more unique and more another concept rather than just kind of specific workplace comedy? I'm just curious about that a little bit with The Good Place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly that. I Parks and Rec ended, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine was off and running. My friend Dan Gore, that I created it with, was running that show every day. I had sort of stepped back, and I was at a point where I had written some version of a lovable collection of goofballs in an office for on three different shows over 10 or 12 years. And so when I was sort of trying to mull over my next idea, I thought, like, well, I could do that again. Like, it's really fun to do that. Like, those shows are so fun to write. You get these big fun casts, and the premise is really lo-fi, which means the characters really get to kind of stand out, and that's, I think, why people like them.
Yep.
But I'd been doing it for more than a decade, and so I had the idea for The Good Place, and it was unlike anything I'd done before, and it was all
Yep.
scary, and I didn't really understand it. But I thought, like, well, I keep thinking about this, and I might as well just try something different, just because why not? So it was a good lesson to learn, which is like, follow the idea. It doesn't matter if the idea if it feels a little bit scary, that probably means it's a thing that's worth doing. That was sort of the way I thought of it.
With Parks and Recreation, because of The Office and the workplace and everything, was there a little bit of pressure, do you find, when you were creating Parks and Rec with the success of The Office and, a similar concept but different characters? Like, I'm curious what that was like before Parks and Rec kind of launched and everything.
Yeah, it was bad. It was a bad kind of pressure because The Office was so popular. We were doing Greg Daniels, who adapted The Office and is my mentor, asked me to create a show with him. And from the beginning, it was actually announced as a spinoff way
Yep.
back in the day. And that was bad because it wasn't a spinoff, and we knew it wasn't a spinoff. And so people were already coming to it with a certain set of expectations because of The Office, because
Yeah.
of the popularity of that show. And then in addition, there was also this kind of weird smoke around the idea that we were spinning off a character. So it took us a while, to sort of cut through all of that expectation and just get to the point where we felt confident just writing a new show with new characters and a new set of themes and a new tone and all that stuff. For most of the first season, we didn't really write it very well. I think the
Mhm.
cast on that show was great before the writing was great. And it took us a full 6 episodes or so to be like, okay, wait a second, we know what this is now.
Yep.
We can now be off and running.
Oh, absolutely. And I do have to say, because, obviously you saw like with the pandemic and even before, times are tough and everything. And, shows like The Office, The Good Place, Parks and Recreation, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I mean, these are shows that were really important for people when they were in tough places. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you in that regard. Because you do provide
Thank
an
you for
escape,
saying
and
that.
it's important to say that, Michael. I have to tell you that.
Thank you. It was, there wasn't much good that came out of the last 18 months, but one
No.
of the good things was that people, I think, not just shows that I've worked on, but a lot of great TV, a lot of great movies, like, people suddenly had nothing to do but watch stories. And
Yep.
I think there was a nice communal feeling, I think, when, even though we were all separated and trapped in our houses, that conversations were being had about, oh, have you seen this show? Have you seen this show? Like, we're watching this with our kids. We're going back and watching this. Like, there was, that it's a very fractured landscape, and there was something about the pandemic that caused people to sort of coagulate, and
Yeah.
everybody watched certain things at the same time, and everybody's kids were watching them, and our kids were talking to other kids, and that was a nice thing. It was a nice way to stay connected to people at a time when we were basically prohibited from staying connected to people.
Absolutely. And we got connected also by going and rewatching The Office, going to rewatch Seinfeld. Like, I feel like that was a big thing as well. And I feel with The Office too, which is really special, and I'm sure you've talked to this with the whole team, is it was people going back and rewatching The Office, but also people that never had a chance to watch The Office before that went. So you kind of had like both streams of like the fans going back and like the new fans, which I think is pretty special as well.
Yeah, and something about The Office, that I think mattered in that time is they made 200 episodes of that show. I mean, in the world we're in now, people make 6, 8, 10 a year. They last for 3 years and they disappear. And that's fine if that's the right length for whatever the show is that you're working on, or if it's, Frank is another award winner here at the festival, and he wrote The Queen's Gambit. Everyone watched The Queen's Gambit. It was wonderful. But The Queen's Gambit was, a limited series. Like, you watch it for 8 hours and then it's over. And The Office and Parks and Rec and Brooklyn and Seinfeld and Modern Family, shows like that, they have 200 installations. And so when you are watching, when you're trapped at home and you're watching stuff with your family, or you need to pass the time, I think there was something very rewarding about picking those shows and being able to stick with them night after night after night for weeks and weeks and weeks and months on end. And that's something that we're kind of losing right now, because most comedies, most TV shows are much shorter seasons and also fewer seasons. And so you get to, we did 50 episodes of The Good Place, 53, I think. That seems like a ton at this point. Like, 100 used to be.
And then the shows that drop all at once, and then still the traditional week after week. Like, it's really different now, I find.
yeah, it's that whole system has sort of fallen apart. And I think it wasn't always the case that every show should have made 24 a year and lasted for 8 years. I think that Lost started a little bit of a trend where they realized, oh, this isn't a show that's meant to last for 10 years and do 25, 26 episodes a year. And they went in and said, look, we need to know when we're ending the show. And as soon as they decided when to end it, it got great. Like, it was really good because the writers could understand the shape of what was left and how their story should be doled out. So I think there are benefits certainly to this new world, but one of the things we've lost is this show that lasts for 10 years and does 225 episodes, like the Friends and the Seinfelds, because those shows are very comforting when you need something to watch over a long period of time.
It's true. People always have uncertainty with super big shows because you assume maybe it's going to come back, but like you never know these days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you never know. Before we wrap up quickly, you won a television writers award. You're a recipient of the award at the Austin Film Festival. Very quickly, not maybe just for television, what advice quickly do you have for anyone looking to kind of write something, whether it's a TV show, a film, a book or something? Do you have anything quickly that you could say to up and coming writers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to say, but I think the best advice I ever got was, when you're starting out as a writer, you don't have a voice because you haven't written anything yet. You only get your voice from practicing and developing stuff and writing stuff over and over and over again. So go find things you love, screenplays you love, or TV shows that you love, and study them. Study them like they're sacred texts and try to understand them. Not just, what the story is, but how do the characters talk? How often do they talk per page? How long are the lines that they say? What's the rhythm and the tone and the style and the nuts and bolts of how the script is put together? And you can be like Talmudic about it. You can get really granular and get really intense about how a script was put together that you love. It's very instructive. Greg Daniels, again, my mentor, he used to, before the days of VCRs, he would, or right when VCRs came out, he would record episodes of shows that he really loved, and then he would push play and then pause and then actually hand write the dialogue, and he would recreate the script by hand, because he felt like by writing it out and staring at it, he could really come to understand it. I think that kind of script analysis can be really helpful when you're just starting out.
Oh, absolutely. Michael, I want to thank you so much for coming on Popternative. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. So, like I said, you have an amazing body of work that's around. So people want to watch a show over and over again, or rewatch it, or watch it for the first time they're around, right?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. And congrats on the award at the Austin Film Festival. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much.
This has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. Until next time, it's Michael Schur and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.